This episode of Getting Geeky with Game Relief has been brought to you by Kolossal Games and their latest Kickstarter, Terrors of London, which is a Victorian horror-themed competitive deck builder that's currently on Kickstarter. You have less than a week to back this one as it ends in 7 days from the time of recording, so it ends next Sunday the 19th, or this Sunday the 19th of August. So definitely check out Terrors of London. That's a competitive deck builder set in Victorian horror. It's awesome and you should check it out. Anyways, that's what this episode has been brought to you. And now let's get on with the show, shall we?
Getting Geeky with Gamer Leaf, the podcast in which one man strives to level up his geekhood and helping you do the same, one battle at a time. Now, let's get geeky with Gamer Leaf.
Once again, we're going to do it like we did last time, thanks to one of our fans from Board Gaming with English. We're going to bring you Kickstarter Corner up front. But did you know there's a way to bypass that? If you don't want to hear Kickstarter Corner every week, you can subscribe. Well, actually, this week, not every week, but this week, people who have subscribed to our mailing list are getting this episode without the Kickstarter Corner, and that could be you as well. What I would like to know is I'm going to put a survey up on our Facebook page over at Getting Geeky with Game Relief's Facebook page, in which you can go ahead and let us know if that is something that's of interest to you. Go ahead and look at the top of our Facebook page and see if that would be something of interest to you and let us know your thoughts on it. We'd appreciate the input. But anyways, let's jump in, shall we?
What is this place? What is it doing here in the Leaves computer? Oh, it's Kickstarter Corner with the Leaves.
What is this thing? Sorry. Every time, you guys always catch me like surprise. You must be listening or something. But before we go ahead and jump on with that, I wanted to tell you about the giveaway that we're doing with the Giveaway Geek, Logan Chops Reviews, and Board Gaming News. If you haven't caught it and you haven't seen our Facebook page, check that out, as we have teamed up with them to bring you a great game. By the way, this giveaway is open to everyone. That's correct. It's open worldwide. So definitely check it out. It's one of the games from the hotness list over on BGG. And it is none other than Hitler's Reich, World War II in Europe. 2 hours, 1 or 2 players. And like I said, this giveaway is open worldwide. So go ahead and click the link. We'll go ahead and have that up on our website soon. Otherwise, in the meantime, jump over to thegiveawaygeek.com and you can check it out there. Yeah, before we get into Kickstarter Corner, we wanted to tell you what the episode's going to be about. We sat down this week with Josh from Hipline Industries, and we talk all about Gamma Grunts, which is a new deck smash game that is coming to Kickstarter tomorrow, in fact. So you'll definitely want to stick around till after Kickstarter Corner, and you can hear all about that and a little bit of the marketing strategy that Josh has put in building his lists. Definitely want to have Josh back on the show. Let us know what you think about the interview too by sending us an email or just commenting or messaging us on Facebook. Our email is gamerleaf@gamerleafgo.com. Kind of like Pokemon Go, but gamerleafgo.com. Now, on with Kickstarter Corner. The first great game, you've heard us talk about it. You've heard the creator on our show. If you haven't, go back and listen as we talk to Ben all about Villains and Henchmen. Villains and Henchmen is a board game for 1 to 4 players where you get to be the bad guys. You're breaking bring out a villain out of a high-security prison, and it's 95% co-op. I really like the 5% that isn't, as if you are the victor of the game, you get to be the villain. Everybody else will be the henchman. There's less than a week to go to back this one, so definitely check out Villains and Henchmen and help this great game become a reality. Next, one with 2 weeks to go, somebody else we had on the show as well, is Keenan, who made Necrotopia, Handbook to the Apocalypse. Necrotopia is a pen and paper role-playing game. They're releasing a complete 30-page color rules set book with original artwork. Definitely check this one out. Like I said, we had the creator on the show. You can go back and listen to that, and definitely check it out. We'll leave links in the show notes like we always do. I know a lot of gamers don't like sports, but if you do, or even if you don't, I recommend you go ahead and check this one out. All-Star Lineup Baseball. It's a fast-paced tabletop baseball game, and it has reached goals, so you definitely should check it out. But anyways, All-Star Lineup Baseball is a fast-paced head-to-head or solo baseball action for your tabletop. When I talked to the creator, what we talked about was the fact that everything's out there on the table in front of you. You don't have to keep referring back to the collector's manual, as my daughter likes to call them, or the rule book as we know them and love them. Next is Dark Naga, OSR Haunting of Hastur modules. And we're actually going to have Kevin on the show this Wednesday coming up, so you can hear all about it. But all 5 parts of the Haunting of Hastur series in print for the OSR, so definitely check this one out. They're really close to their goal, and there's still 3 weeks or 21 days to get in on this, so definitely check that out from Dark Naga Adventures. Next, this one's new. It might be new to you, it might not be, but it's new to me. Survival of the Dummies. It's a party game for underachievers. In this game, you're actually go ahead and you're answering trivia questions, but in the meantime, you're also doing silly things like rubbing your head and patting your belly at the same time of answering questions. You get everything in the box that you need. And what does it say? It says, even if you get the answers right, you're still going to look like a dummy. So this is the Survival of the Dummies that's on Kickstarter. And you've got a whole month or just less than a month to back this one, as it ends on the 8th of September. And if you know us over at Getting Geeky with Gamer Life, you know I love Cthulhu. And calendars are pretty good as well. So why not combine the two? Well, New Comic Games has beat you to it in creating a calendar featuring Cthulhu and other mythos strangeness, featuring the artwork of Evgeny Malashchevek. I probably slaughtered that. But anyways, there's 12 fantastic images for 2019. Definitely check out The Year of Cthulhu, a 2019 calendar coming to you from New Comic Games. This one goes through the 30th of August, so definitely check that out. And like we said, go ahead and make sure you jump on over at our Facebook page. Check out the giveaway that's going on in our banner. You'll see that there, as well as we'll leave links in the show notes. And then you'll definitely want to answer our survey so you can let us know how you would like the show to be structured or what parts of the show you like. Anyways, let's jump into this interview that's already in progress. Okay?
Now, let's get geeky with Gamer Leaf.
You're a mad scientist with one goal, world domination. There's only one problem. There are other mad scientists in your way, so it's your mission to smash them in the face. To defeat the other mad scientists, you will create a gang of grunts using gamma juice, a radioactive goo. You'll also impede your opponent's efforts in your pursuit for infamy, bringing you closer to world domination.
Did that sound familiar, you guys? It didn't to me neither, but this is the story of Gamma Grunts, a deck smash game, and we're lucky enough to have on one of the creators and masterminds behind that great game, Josh. Is that correct? Is that how you fall in line with Gamma Grunts, Josh?
Yeah, sure is. Yeah, it's my brain baby. geeky.
Thank you so much for joining us on Getting Geeky with Gamer Leap. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it.
No problem. Now, before we jump into Gamma Grunts and whatnot, let's rewind a little bit if we could. We don't have to go back too terribly far, of course, unless you were born into tabletop board gaming. But how did you get started into playing tabletop board games and whatnot?
Well, to be honest, I was kind of born into it. I come from a long line of people who would go to gaming conventions. I grew up as like a 7 or 8 year old playing role-playing games and board games. We were playing a lot of role-playing games, more so than tabletop board games, but grew up going to Gen Con and Origins and working the auctions there, helping out, and from a very young age. And then I got into helping companies demo games like Looney Labs, and then later on helping with Japanime games, and then more recently Cool Mini or Not. And now here I am.
So that's pretty cool. So besides Gamma Grunts, do you have a current favorite game? Because if I let you pick Gamma Grunts, who knows what my audience would do.
That's totally fair. I think, honestly, I really love... Well, I have 2 favorite games. If I'm getting a little bit more in-depth and a little bit more of like planning out the strategy and trying to like still... I don't know, think through a longer game, I would have to say Blood Rage still. We're still getting a kick out of Blood Rage a lot. We really love that it's pretty easy to learn, but there's a lot of, especially with the card drafting and the decisions you make, you can kind of tank your way through that. But then also Azul. We really love Azul, especially with some of my non-hobby gamer family members. They're really like kind of exposing them to the gamer culture.
Awesome. Yeah, Blood Rage is kind of where I fell into love with gaming. I wanted a game to play, and I just sat down to watch a video. Rodney Smith watch it played, so I could play it with my. He'll be 10 this year, but it was a couple years back. We sat down during the holiday season and played it straight off of what Rodney Smith told us, and it was like Christmas all over again. So ever since then, I kind of just loved games or whatnot more so than not. And Azul, I was supposed to play that at my gaming group this last week, but we had too many players there, so I wasn't able to play. So hopefully I can play that sometime. Well, so perhaps somebody else is like me and hasn't been able to get Azul to the table. What can you tell us about that game, Josh?
Well, it's a very, very simple game when it comes down to what you're trying to do. You're trying to basically put tiles on the board and strategically place them in a way that gets you the most amount of points. So whenever you're doing that, kind of thinking ahead as much as you can, but really you're just trying to place whatever you can in a way that makes sense. So it's really something that... what I really like about it is you kind of can think through like, okay, this is how many people are playing. Here's how many tiles I need. How can I go about this and trying to guess what other people are going for by looking at their boards? Or you can also, what I really like about it is I can get into that kind of mathy gameplay, which I like a lot. Nothing too crazy, but I can get into that mathy, think tanky gameplay where I'm trying to, outsmart everyone else at the table. But you can also invite people to just play the game, get tiles on the board, and sometimes they might just get lucky and might end up beating you and winning the game. So I think it's really as simple as you're just trying to place tiles on a board, and but there ends up being a little bit of sub-complexity there that really makes it fun.
Awesome. And you said you like that for your non-hobby friends?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's it ends up getting very like I think it was one weekend not too long ago, we were at a lake house, and the entire time I introduced a couple people and how to play the game and was teaching them. And then the entire weekend, it's just one person. Whenever a new person would come by, someone else would teach them how to game, and it ended up becoming kind of like a chain reaction.
Pretty cool. So something completely different, or maybe it's not necessarily completely different, but it sounds like it is. The word on the street is you have a new game on Kickstarter. Well, actually, it's supposed to launch this upcoming week, or by the time we hear this week. What can you tell us about Gamma Grunts, a deck smash game?
Well, Gamma Grunts, deck smash game, it's kind of a term we coined. It basically, it takes those competitive collectible card games where battle is really the focus, and it turns that into a deck builder. I know that a lot of people get really, really heavily into Magic or Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or games like that, and feel like it's kind of a pay-to-play kind of thing. Well, we wanted to include it all in one box. And in addition to kind of having that battle feel, we also wanted to have it be a little bit more of a resource management game while you're trying to build your deck. And so there's this, I know I talked about the radioactive goo gamma juice. It's basically like the mana or the resource in the game that'll help. You can bring out your grunts to kind of fight or play cards that affect other players. But you also, as you're drafting cards, because you're discarding cards from your hand in order to get draft points, when you're drafting those cards, you're putting them into a discard pile that we call the recycle bin. And so in order to get that recycle bin into your deck, you have to actually send one of those Gamma Juice cards to your recycle bin, and then it shuffles it all together. And so it's kind of a thing where you want to make sure that you don't build up your forces too fast. You want to make sure you're drafting cards, because it's very, very much, you're on the edge of, like, you're working with what sometimes seems like limited resources. It's basically ends up being something where every decision really matters, or at least feels like it matters in this kind of game. So that's kind of the gist of the gameplay as far as what we were shooting for, and we feel like we did a pretty darn good job after like a couple years of playing and playtesting.
So yeah, you talk about drafting. Does that mean that draft mechanic is in it? I've seen that in what do you call it, seasons, where you like take a card and then pass it to the other player and they take one, and then so on and so forth. Is that what you have going on with Gamma Grunts with the drafting?
It's actually completely different. So we have it set up to where there are visible and stacks of hidden cards, ranging in cost from 1 to 4. And so everything that you can draft is visible for other people. And when a card is taken from one of those slots per se, or one of those visible places, if there's nothing there, it immediately flips over the next card. And so it's not something to where it's not a card where, because there's varying costs and varying power levels, I guess, if you would. It's not something to where everyone will automatically get the same number of cards, because you can either end up getting a couple of 1 cost cards or a single 2 cost card, or you can get a 2 cost and a 1 cost, or you can get a 3 cost to try to, because those more powerful cards, although they're more expensive, they do a lot of really cool stuff. Since the draft piles are visible, it's something that everyone will always be able to draft something. So I think the only time that I've ever experienced a game where someone went through all of the cards of one of those stacks, it was a game where no one was doing anything and people really were very, very defensive. And that was, I think, the next turn someone had won that game. So it was a very, very slow game to play. So I know that's kind of a little bit all over the place, but I think that, to answer your question, the drafting is something where you'll always be able to think about how you want to use the cards in your hand in order to either play those cards or use them to draft the cards from the draft piles.
Okay, so you're using a mechanism of you're paying with the cards that you have in your hand to buy another card or whatnot?
Yeah, so it's basically like if you have 3 cards in your hand, you discard or what we call recycle them to get 3 costing cards. It's also not only how you do drafting, as far as like it's not like the discard number of cards, the draft points is related to cost, but it's also how we do damage as well. And so when someone is attacking you and damaging you, whenever they do 2 points of damage, you have to destroy 2 costing cards. So you either destroy 2 1-cost cards from your hand, or you destroy a single 2-cost card. Now you can also destroy that from your deck, so it ends up like it can kind of be random to where if you have a 4-cost card on the top of your deck and you flip that over and someone's just doing 1 damage to you, it ends up putting you at a disadvantage a little bit. So it ends up being like kind of that can be a really risky maneuver to do that. But everything is kind of related to that cost as far as when it comes to drafting and also when it comes to the damage being dealt, and kind of because your deck is kind of your life in this game.
Yeah, so that sounds pretty cool. So per se, man, you were to sit down to play Gamma Grunts, Josh, what would that look like? Wait, I mean, what would it sound like? This is a podcast after all.
Yeah. Well, it would start off with, because you only have 15 cards when you start off, which includes some cards that are the Gamma Juice, so your resource in the game. We also have 5 grunts that we call brute, which are just the very, very small guys that have 1 attack and 1 defense, similar to that of those other attack or battle games. And then we also have a card that you can use to either A, gain infamy, which again is our victory condition where you hit 20 infamy, or you can destroy that card and end up getting an extra Gamma Juice from the draft piles into play for you. So whenever we're playing, usually it ends up being something to where people will put out brutes here and there and put out these grunts first off, but it's really going to focus on drafting those cards early because you want to get as much into that deck as possible. Since that deck is your life, since that's your resource, I mean, since as a mad scientist, you know, you're tied into what you create. If you're not creating anything as mad scientist, then you're not really doing your job as a mad scientist, and so you can kind of catch yourself in a not so infamous track, if you would.
Awesome. Now I hear I suffer from analysis paralysis. Are my friends going to hate me more for playing this? Is there a lot of decisions, or how's that going to look?
I mean, there are some decisions that you have to make, and analysis paralysis can affect people just like it can in any game. However, you only have 5 cards starting at the beginning of your turn, or less, depending if someone damaged you. So it ends up being something that you can only do so much. And if you are trying to decide of whether or not you want to attack someone or not attack someone, those people that suffer from that analysis paralysis, or AP, as a lot of people call it, those people end up just deciding usually, I'm not going to attack, I'm just going to sit back, and then they just draft cards, or they just keep the cards in their hand. So it ends up being something to where it's really not that hard to play with someone with analysis paralysis in this game, because there's only there's 4 visible cards at a time, and there's only 5 cards in your hand.
Awesome. And during play testing, was there anything that you had to scrap because it just wouldn't work for this game, Josh?
Oh yeah, we started off towards the beginning of having it be a game to where people would draft everything for their deck in the beginning of the game. So really it was a half an hour to 45 minutes of drafting, and then you would get to play. That didn't work. It wasn't something that was conducive to playing. So that was a big thing early on, in the beginning, which is why it's so important for anyone who wants to design a game to play test it and play test it quick. Just get it on the table, cut up pieces of card or cut up cards and put them in sleeves and try out whatever design you're thinking about. So later on, there were quite a few different things that, especially certain cards where after a while, because the game changed over time, certain cards just didn't have any place in this game. So we actually started initially with 500 cards, which was just a bit excess. And it made it so some games, depending on how you shuffled, you couldn't really build a strategy based on those 500 cards with how the game plays now. So we had to cut down some of the number of the cards down to 200. So it basically ended up evolving over time. Nothing too big later on, except that we did decide to make it so people, whenever they don't shuffle their deck, basically their recycle bin into their deck, and it basically if they have to draw and they can't, we did have that be where you would end up losing the game. You were knocked out because you go completely insane as a mad scientist and you can't manage your resources and therefore you're out. We decided to scrap that and went with, if you are ever in that situation where you're supposed to draw and you can't, you end up still go to completely mad, but you lose your infamy, because there's nothing less infamous than not being able to create things or not being able to do things as a mad scientist. Because even though you're completely chaotic and trying to, take over the world, you still have to be intelligent enough to try to keep that going. So, those a lot of small things, but I'd say like early on, really, really big thing. And then, recently we decided to change something that really just changed the gameplay for a very small percentage of the games, because most of the people don't end up making it so they can't draw, or that they don't lose, or they don't get knocked out of that, like in that manner. They would usually want to get their recycle bin into their deck because they get all these cool cards. And the only way they're going to actually see the light of day is if you use that mechanic or mechanism of taking that gamma juice, setting it to the recycle bin, and getting it all together.
So how did you know it was ready to go to Kickstarter or whatnot?
Well, we kept on being told by people who were playtesting that this is a fun game and we don't have any more advice for you. And at that point, after hearing that so many times, and after we had, started paying for art, we're like, okay, this is the time, especially with the crowd that we've kind of built, since we've been going to conventions and game stores, both in our area, basically from Pittsburgh to Indianapolis, and really just mostly lateral moves, not a whole lot of north and south. My business partner's in Cleveland, Kyle Bainline, and he's been working up there, and I've been down here in Columbus, both Ohio. So a lot of our crowd is in the Midwest, but really the combination of being told that it's good to go and having, half of our art created, and also having a decent crowd of people who are interested in the game, we just knew that it was time.
Awesome. Yeah. A lot of times, I don't know if it was Jamie Stegmeyer or if it was Richard Bliss from one of the podcasts I used to listen to about Kickstarters or whatnot. Funding the Dream was his podcast. I don't remember which one of those coined the phrase, but a lot of the times when you have a problem on Kickstarter, it's not that you have a funding problem, you have a crowd problem. So there's a lot of designers and stuff, people that go to Kickstarter, listen to the show and whatnot. So what did you do to build the crowd? You said you went to a lot of cons and stuff, but how did you get them? Did you get them on any kind of list, or what did you do with that?
Yeah, it was actually using a great app, which we can go into details more on, but Mailchimp. It basically, they have it built into their application to where someone can enter their email address and automatically be added to your list and has them agree to that, to the legal aspect of it, to them adding to your mailing list. They agree to it right then and there. So every time someone would be playing the game, we'd run them through a demo or run them through a learn to play. We'd be like, hey, would you like to be added to our mailing list so we can let you know when we go live with Kickstarter? And that's what worked out. So we were using that, and then also we at Origins we had a booth, an entrepreneur booth, and every single person that came through and did a demo also got put into a raffle if they were willing to sign up for the Mailchimp and sign up for our list. They got put into a raffle for a early copy, basically a more prototype copy of Gamma Grunts. And so we gave away 3 copies of Gamma Grunts to people. And really that was to build that ambassadorship, while also getting people at the table and getting them signed up for the mailing list.
Awesome. Yeah. So, and if any of these questions you prefer not to answer, that's okay. I can edit out. But next question for you in regard to that. So it looks like, according to this, if I did the math right and everything, according to this, at the price that you guys have set for just the basics, you would need about 256 backers. I imagine your list is quite bigger than that. Would that be right?
Actually, it's a little bit shy of that. It's right around 200 at this point. And part of that was because we lost some people, and this would be just a piece of advice that I give to everyone out there. We sent out a happy 4th of July email to people, and a bunch of people unsubscribed. It wasn't something that was really talked about or anything like that. And, it's not really it doesn't seem like a bad thing, but it just probably left a bad taste in us, a handful of people. And I'm not talking dozens of people. I'm talking maybe 10 or less. So little things like that are not really things that you should do.
But that could also be a good thing, because make sure they're actually really fans of it or whatnot.
Oh, totally. But I mean, it's also sometimes maybe they think it might be a little spammy if you send just a happy 4th of July, because they don't want to necessarily hear that, but it is what it is. But the main reason why we felt comfortable with that amount was because of we had a separate following, the vast majority of them, after comparing what was listed on Facebook versus what was listed in the Mailchimp, where they really end up being 2 completely different lists with very little overlap. But we have just shy of 200 people on Facebook that took the time to like our page and follow our page. And really, just, I think with that in mind, we were feeling pretty good about kind of moving forward.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll have to have you back on if you don't mind to talk about post Kickstarter, to talk about how the different lists performed or whatnot. So that's awesome. So per se, somebody likes what they've heard and whatnot, and they're driving or something, so they haven't had a chance to check out the Kickstarter or whatnot, if they're listening to this after the fact, or if they listen to it before the Kickstarter launches or whatnot, because it's launching, Tuesday or Wednesday of this week?
Tuesday of this week.
Tuesday this week. So they listen to it beforehand or whatnot. What is it going to put them back to get a copy of Gamma Grunt so they can start playing and become an evil scientist?
We're going to do $39 plus shipping, which includes 200 cards, and 4 player tokens, which, if we hit our stretch goals, will be shaped like little Erlenmeyer flasks, which are really cool looking. And then it also includes a bifold game board, pretty much like any of the other game boards, like Monopoly or anything like that you'd see. good quality game board, and then 4 individual cardstock player mats, similar to those of like Blood Rage. It'll include all of that in the box at $39, plus shipping.
That's awesome. So there's a so you said there's some kind of board that they play on as well as a player mat. How does that look? So there's is that for them to play their cards down against the other opponent?
Yeah. So we because you end up because there's a lot of moving around of cards, and obviously you have your little workshop, your lab, if you would, as a mad scientist, and because there's 4 different piles to draft from, as well as whenever you destroy a card, you smash it, as we call it, and it goes to a smash pile on the player board, the main board. And then there's also a spot for Gamma Juice. There's so many different little spots for things that we're like, we are so tired of playing some of these deck builders where, the site map, if you would, for what you're supposed to do and where you're supposed to put it isn't included in the box. And so we wanted to include, at the very least, the main player board, or the main game board. So we started off with that. And then because of how the deck and the recycle bin end up working together, because you can blind draft cards, we wanted to make it so you could still keep those cards hidden from the other players. If people don't have the player boards in front of them, the individual cardstock ones, what ends up happening is you have 2 face-down decks in front of you, neither of which are labeled, and it ends up being it's kind of a memory game of which is which. And we were like, it really, really improves the gameplay to have that labeled in this situation, so people can still keep their cards hidden. Add that mysterious aspect of it, so no one knows what cards, even when you're drafting cards, if you end up sending those to the recycle bin to get draft points, it ends up being hard for other players to count those cards and figure out what you're getting rid of because they can't see that recycle bin. And so that's the big thing there, that we wanted to just from a purely organizational standpoint, we wanted to have that setup. Then comes into the aspect of the lab. Now, whenever you play one of your grunts, it's fresh out of a birthing pod, and so it's not going to be able to do much. But it's also, you're going to kind of want to keep it back a little bit, and so that's where it ends up getting born into the lab setting. And so there's a place for that, and then it's symbolic of the next turn, kind of like summoning sickness in Magic the Gathering. If you've played, the next turn, once they're good to go, and you need to clean the lab, so you push those grunts out into the world so they can go start to wreck things and smash people's faces and cause them chaos, and then you can also clean your lab. So it's kind of it ends up being a little bit more thematic, having these player boards and everything as well.
Awesome. Now, around our house, I don't know, I didn't see anything on the Kickstarter, but around our house, we really like the neoprene mats. Is that something that might be in the works, or?
We would like to do them. However, because of minimum print runs, this isn't something that we can do on this campaign. It's just not looking to be feasible in this setting, because of the minimum print runs and the scope of what we're doing, and because it's our first game as a company, as Hipline Industries, and we don't want to write a check that we can't cash, and we've done a lot of research to make sure that we deliver a game that's both quality and also make it so we don't have a situation where we have to do another Kickstarter in order to support this Kickstarter. So we wanted to keep it very, very simple. Everything as far as exclusives is going to be something that we're focusing on, just making this game great. And there might be an extra cards or something like that that will be added to it, but it's not going to be anything that at that point we'll be able to print those cards off for everyone and give those out. Whereas if only, if we have like the goal, we want to shoot for 600 plus backers as the that's when we start feeling good about what we're doing, which is lofty, but we figure if out of the 400 some odd fans between our mailing list and Facebook, if we can convert around 75% of those people, that's half of what, like if you know who half of your backers are, then, or if you know who your backers are going to be, you can roughly estimate that it might be half of your backers, which is like as far as in a good world where people are into what you're doing. So yeah, that's kind of the hope there. And if only 25% of that 600 end up getting those mats, then we still have to hit the minimum of a certain portion, and it just didn't seem feasible.
Like you said, you want to make sure you can deliver on your first thing. So going along with that, so you don't overpromise and underdeliver. If somebody goes ahead and backs and jumps on the campaign on Gamma Grunts, a deck smash game, or if they back it and whatnot, I know you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, but when would they anticipate getting their game so they can start playing?
Well, with having as many cards as we have, and with our agreement with our artists, we're very upfront that we have to give our artists time to create the quality artwork for the second half of the game. So we're looking at having the artwork completed by mid to late January, depending on the artist. But he was very, very good about his time frame and very, very good about hitting his goal. Artist James Koenig out of Freelanced Fridge out of Arizona, and with that expectation of being done mid to late January and working around the Chinese New Year, because we are going to be manufacturing in China, we're expecting our game to be hitting US hitting backers April or May of next year. So it is something that that's a bit of time, but we wanted to be realistic and give a proper expectation rather than saying we'll have this game to you in February and then you're not getting it for 3 months later than that. We didn't want to do that. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I understand that. So that's awesome. And jumping back to a little bit before when you talked about like getting half of your backers or whatnot, I heard on a podcast today, it might have been the Board Game Design Lab or something. I think the Board Game Design Lab podcast today, where they talked about something people do with Kickstarters is they set a lower goal that they don't necessarily need, but they want to reach something higher. In setting your goal, if you don't mind my asking, that you need to reach, will that goal get you so you can create the game, or do you need to go higher than that?
No, that goal is going to make it so we create the game. That goal is going to make it so people will still, whoever backs the game, like honestly, if we need to, if we just hit that 10,000 goal, we're going to create 500 copies. We're not going to really be making money on the Kickstarter end of things. And, as far as in a business model, it's not something that you want to shoot for based on like the return on investment. But the way we see it, because we love designing games and because we believe in what we do, we really, really feel like, at the worst case scenario, is we don't fund, which in that case, we'll rebuild and kind of go from there. But really, the worst case scenario when we do fund, if we just barely, it's an investment into future projects as well. Because say we run Gamma Grunts, people get it on their table and they really love it because it's a fun game, and it feels like a different gaming each time. We think that we could probably do a second run at that point based on, just building that crowd even more. Worst case scenario of us funding. But, obviously there's a little bit of we just have to wait and see, which is kind of the terrifying part of running a Kickstarter too.
Yeah, for sure. Now comes the hard part. So that's awesome. Now, per se, somebody's fallen asleep. It wouldn't be because of you or Gamma Grunts, the great game you have here. It'd be because of me and my podcast. What the time of recording, let's see here. I believe this morning when I checked, we're in we've just finished the first week of August or whatnot. So, and since the first of the year, I think we have about 133 episodes or something along the lines, and so they get a little tired of hearing me drone on and on, but now they're suddenly jolted awake so they don't hit the oncoming traffic, and so you have their full attention. Josh, why should they take a chance on Gamma Grunts, a deck smash game, especially with all the other great games that are out there on Kickstarter currently?
Well, I mean, you like deck builders because loads of people love deck builders, but you also want more player interaction, so you're not just building up a passive passive force in front of you. Like, you're not just building up your own thing. You want to have that interaction. You want to add in some politics and some, trickery, and where your decisions all matter. Well, then this is honestly a game that you're going to enjoy, and you're really going to have a different experience multiple times, and you're really going to, every single time you play, or every single time anyone plays, they're like, I want to play again. I want to see what would happen if I did this, this, and this. Or, you want to have the feeling of, conquering the world as a mad scientist. You can really get into the role with this when you create your minions, your little grunts, and they can duke it out with one another. And, you can, send someone with a laser beam out to zap one of them, or, send flip the switch and get a little power surge for you, Yeah. So all of those reasons, reason why you should definitely check out Gamma Grunts and definitely consider backing.
Yeah, so definitely go ahead and check out Gamma Grunts, a deck smash game. We'll make sure we leave all the links in the show notes so people don't have to necessarily type it in. They can just go ahead and click the link. People like to do that more often than not, so they can check it out straight there. Now, I know you listen to a couple of our podcasts, so maybe you're ready, maybe you're not. But the next portion of the show is called Adventures in Application Acquisition, where we talk about an app, be it for your cell phone, your tablet, your computer, or even a video game. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be related to tabletop board gaming or not. Is there an app you use a lot of that we can talk about for a moment, Josh?
Yeah, I would love to. Specifically, an application called Buffer. Are you familiar with Buffer at all?
I've heard it come and talk as people talk about it in passing, something to deal with social media maybe. But what can you tell us about Buffer?
Well, Buffer's a great way. Obviously, a huge portion of the board game industry is involved in social media. And a big thing of what you have to focus on is keeping people engaged, putting out content, and especially if you're involved on Twitter, making sure that content keeps on coming up, or different content keeps coming up, because the minute you post it, it's out there forever. However, it's very hard to see it because there's so much stuff that's out there. And so Buffer helps you basically kind of set yourself up to schedule posts for yourself to put out there. So you have a bunch of ideas in the middle of the night and you're like, oh, I want to post all these amazing ideas. Well, or you want to, share artwork for your game, or share some progress in your game. If you share it all at the same time, then there's a chance that, a very, very small number of people are going to see it, which is totally fine if you're completely just self-surface whenever you're getting on there. But if you really, really want to interact with people and really have a presence, then you can also end up, you can, through Buffer, schedule those posts. And so people don't end up seeing your posts over and over and over again right at the same time. You can schedule them out a little bit so it keeps your thoughts kind of organized. Additionally, what's really, really cool is, there's actually a subscription you can pay, which I think is $15 a month, which honestly, it's worth it if you use it that much all the time. But if it's only for the duration of like a Kickstarter or anything, or when you're trying to build up that social media presence, totally fine. Because I might end up stopping the subscription after the Kickstarter is complete, because then I don't I want to stay engaged, but it can be a little bit more naturally periodically. One thing that you also get to do with that subscription one thing that you get to do with that subscription is you can make it so you can retweet other people's posts on a Buffer. And so you can schedule to retweet a specific post. So that way, say if you find out that your friend who is running a specific thing on a specific day, like an event, or if they're starting their Kickstarter, you can actually schedule yourself to kind of remind the world of your friend's really cool project. So it's a way to really interact with people and also make sure you put out content for others to see as well.
So you're saying that everybody doesn't always living on social media like it might appear?
They're still living on social media, because what I'm doing is I spend, off and on all day. And mind you, on top of being a board game designer, I do have a full-time job and a wife who's expecting this November. And there's a lot of things that go on. So I can't spend all day, every day on it, but I do spend a considerable amount of time on Twitter and everything. When I'm on there, I have an extension on my computer, so that way I can actually I'm still on Twitter and still checking things out, but it's more so while I'm looking at Twitter, I can retweet that way.
Okay, awesome. But this way you don't have to, even if something comes up, like congratulations on the pregnancy, by the way, but when you have the baby or whatnot, you won't necessarily have to be glued to your computer or whatnot, I guess.
Yeah, or if I'm like, I really, really want to share this specific thing, but I want to give it a little bit of time, because I want to make sure that I'm available to interact with people. But I have this really cool idea, then you can use Buffer for that as well.
Awesome. And you're not necessarily spamming everybody every 5-10 minutes or whatnot.
Right. That's what I most love about it. You're not spamming everyone with everything. Now, sometimes the content is absolutely amazing, and I don't mind if people spam me with, especially with the Fireball Island. Show me a bunch of pictures of that being played all day, every day, and I'm gonna, be really, really engaged with that. But sometimes it's nice to spread that out as well.
Yeah, so that's cool. Yeah, so we'll make sure we leave links in the show notes. Now, I don't want to keep you all night, but you talked about possibly telling us a little bit about Mailchimp. Do you have a couple more minutes that we can talk about that? Usually we don't do more than one app, but if you're able to, could we talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, I have all the time in the world for you. So Mailchimp is actually a way for you to collect email addresses, and I think you can collect up to 1,000 email addresses, and it's free. You basically can use that to not only store the email addresses for the sake of, notifying people of your Kickstarter. You can notify them months after you interacted with them. But it's also a way for you to make sure that, because you can track some demographic information in there if you end up deciding to store that. So it can kind of be a good way for you to track how much activity you had, or when did you have the most activity with specific people. Things like that. Or, when did you most grow it? Was Gen Con more fruitful than Origins? And did this interaction have more of an effect on, if you can store like you can add in their name or birth date or anything. Like, so if you add in their birthday, you can actually make it so you can be like, oh, I wonder if people in January like my game more than this, or I wonder if they've had a recent birthday, are they more apt to want to play a game, and like little things like that I find interesting just from a statistic standpoint. But yeah, it really. The meat of it really comes down to just having a good way to store your email addresses, so that way come time for your Kickstarter to launch, you can notify those people, which I kind of had, and then it's a little bit more of a hard pressed rule on this after sending out that July 4th email. I have the 48 hours before the campaign, when the campaign goes live, 48 hours before the campaign ends, and then when the campaign ends, when it's successfully funded. Those are the 4 emails I feel like we should send out using Mailchimp. So just for the simple fact of storing those emails for that specific purpose, it's a perfect application for you, because you can just pull it up on your phone right there at the table.
There you go. And don't forget about Happy Labor Day.
Yeah. There you go.
Or that might throw more people off your list, huh?
Maybe. And I was actually just looking at it. It honestly didn't really make that big of an impact. It might have just been, like you said, weeding out some of the people who really weren't interested in, maybe they signed up because they wanted to win a free demo and or a free copy of a game, and didn't really maybe didn't want to back a Kickstarter or something like that. Maybe they just wanted something for free, or if they were with their friend and trying to win their friend a copy, things like that. I just opened up the Mailchimp app while we were talking about it, and it really, July 4th had almost no adverse reaction. So,
there you go. So I guess now you can wish them a happy Labor Day, and that probably will come pretty soon around when it's going to end. So if somebody's listening, how long do they have to go and jump on and back Gamma Grunts, a Dex Smash game?
They have until September 13th, and that's it. Well, I mean, unless we do the Pledge Manager, but on the Kickstarter, you got to launch the Kickstarter, or else we won't make it happen.
There you go. So September 13th. So awesome. Yeah. So we'll make sure, like I said, we'll make sure we leave links in the show notes or whatnot. Minus coming there to Ohio to stalk you in person or whatnot. How can people go about keeping up with you, or what Hip Line Industries has going on, or especially with Gamma Grunts?
Well, we're going to make it really easy. Everything is Gamma Grunts related. So if you go on Twitter, you can find me Gamma Grunts, GAMMA Grunts, and if you go on Facebook, just search for Gamma Grunts. Or if you just go, we're also on Board Game Geek, or you can find, like, if you just Google us, you'll be able to find us. But we definitely, we're very reachable.
Awesome. And if you give me the links and stuff, I'll make sure I'll include those in the show or whatnot, the show notes, so we have notes to show or whatnot, like Richard Simpson from We're Not Wizards always says. But yeah, we really appreciate you coming on Getting Geeky with Game Relief with us tonight. I know that when the episode launches, ends up launching, it'll be a little bit late, but we also wanted to wish you a happy birthday as you decided to come on Getting Geeky with Game Relief on your birthday, from the sound of it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Midnight on my birthday. It's actually just changed over for my birthday.
Oh, we missed it. We should have wished you at the first of the episode, so I apologize about that.
No, you're great.
Anyways, yeah, we don't want to keep you all night, but we really appreciate you coming on Getting Geeky with Game Relief with us tonight to talk all about Gamma Grunts, a Dex Smash game.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Gamer Leaf levels up. Tune in next week to see if Gamer Leaf's luck holds up.